Hi, I'm Ernest, and I'm a retired jet engine designer for uh, jet engine transient operability. And I've just seen a report for the A320 where on October 30th, the flight from Cancun to Newark had an uncontrolled loss of altitude. And I'm trying to dig through all the details to figure out exactly what was going on, but they're attributing it to a solar flare, so some kind of electromagnetic interference, or EMI as we call it in the industry. And it's got me a little scared. It's a little delinquent for the FAA, the NTSB, the French authorities, DGAC, and I don't know who the investigative arm is, to wait a month from October 30th to now. I'm just hearing that they're going to ground the fleet of A320s and maybe A319s and A321s, certain ones, to replace a aileron computer or update the software. I'm not quite sure exactly what they're going to do, but it's delinquent to have a 30-day lapse after an incident like that. Solar flares doesn't sound like it. I'd like to know. They said that the airplane was taken out of service and that it was, I assume, looked at, and then they flew it in a ferry flight to Boston, and then put it back in service. But they didn't say what they fixed or what they changed. Did they find the root cause of that? Was Airbus able to reproduce that incident with the data they got from the black box recorders from that airplane? I'm a little concerned, especially in the era that we're in, of the 737 Max issues, where Boeing designed an airplane that a normal pilot can't fly, and then said the airplane was designed correctly and did nothing about it. Now here we're finding Airbus. You think, oh, maybe they're Europeans, they're a little more precise, or doing a little better job. No better. How do you go 30 days before you issue something to fix that problem of an uncontrolled loss of altitude? Now, I'm kind of concerned because I can't find out the details. It sounds like it was at cruising altitude. Let me just yeah, when I did a internet artificial intelligence search on details of the incident, of that commercial flight incident, said that there was a rapid drop in altitude, and the flight contributed to a flight control issue. And the aircraft dropped from an initial cruise altitude of about 35,000 feet to 18,000 feet in 5 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes? Okay, that's kind of a long time there. Then descended a further 12,200 feet in the next 5 minutes. That's a little scary. It went from 18,000 feet and lost 12 down to somewhere around 5,000 feet above the ground. That's a little scary. So were there two incidents or one? I can't tell. Maybe AI doesn't know either. They obviously picked this up out of some news article. And then the incident occurred during the en route cruise phase of the flight, which, I was a little concerned about. When we do EMI testing, you use like cell phone noise, as lightning, and a bunch of other stuff, and you uh, throw that onto an engine and see how it reacts, what it does. And if it doesn't do anything too bad, you don't worry about it. I mean, it might do something a little bit, and if it's not much, you don't worry about it. But if it does something, that could be a large change in thrust or makes it not controllable, well, then you got to change the software. So, and that's why we went from what was it, the G3 cell phone service, to G4, or G4 to G5, one of those. Everybody was all nervous because when we do airplane testing, we use the cell phone service that we'd had for the last 10 years, which was G3 or G4, and then they were going to upgrade it, and well, it hadn't been tested for that, and everybody's like, whoa, hey, is anything bad going to happen? Because we don't know. So, anyways, it's a little trial and error. So, but the solar flare thing, I would have thought you'd be able to predict that a little better. So I'm not convinced that's it. Uh, so, anyways, but the part that it started at cruise altitude means that it wasn't due to a cell phone. Everybody's cell phones are not attached to any towers. Nobody's getting any calls, and even the people like me that don't put their phone in airplane mode, which now I'm going to when I get on an Airbus airplane. You if somebody gives you a call, you got the EMI, electromagnetic interference. When you get a call, 35,000 feet, you can't reach the towers down below. So it's not due to probably not due to cell phones. It's due to something else. So hopefully it's not a terrorist thing, somebody on board with a EMI disruptor or something. I don't know. It's a little scary. Uh, but they describe it as a drop over 5 minutes. When I look at the aviation brief, which is some kind of online magazine from November 29th by the Tab News Desk, they describe that. Let's see here. Where do they say that? Rare, but I say what they say. Let's see here. There was something where it was. Oh, yeah, here. Uncontrolled pitch down event for about 4 to 5 seconds before the autopilot corrected. This is from the French authorities, some report published by the French BEA on behalf of the NTSB. So was it a 5 minute descent, or was it a 4 or 5 second descent? That's a big difference. And was it one event or was it two events? Either way, you know, I've done this before where you get black box data and you just work it and you can reproduce it. You can, when you get the black box data, you have an hypothesis for what went wrong, and then you can reproduce what happened. And I'd like to know, was Airbus able to, knowing what the solar storms were that day, is that what they used um, to to figure that out? Now, when I look at um, what the solar radiation was on that day, again, looking AI, trying to find out what went on, it said that the radiation levels and geomagnetic storming on October 30th, 2025, while significant enough to cause technical issues for sensitive systems, they know about this, they put this right in here, about this airplane incident, were part of the general increase in solar activity as the sun approached or passed the peak of its 11-year solar cycle. And then when they talk about compared to previous years and major events, the activity on that day, that's my words, that day, was not an incredible high level compared to the strongest events of 2025 or historical superstorms from the sun. The strongest flare of 2025 occurred on November 11, 2025, and major aurora producing storms occurred in May and October 2024. The activity on May 30th, 2025 was relatively minor in the grand scheme of solar cycle. But then they add this little caveat here, but it highlighted system vulnerabilities to typical space weather conditions. I say bull. I say unless they reproduce that, unless they could reproduce that in their simulator using what they know about the solar flares, that they don't know what happened. And that's got me a little nervous. They are being a little scant on the details. Now they're saying here about what they're actually going to do about it. What are they going to do about it? Here, there. Here, Airbus is not being completely transparent about. They're issuing some things about the flight control computer behavior across the A320 family, but they haven't identified the aircraft or operator involved. but has publicly stated publicly that a recent event led to its analysis of data corruption risks in certain A320 family configurations. So they're not going to tell us that they fixed that issue or not, but they are saying that there's something they issued originally something that was less severe, and then an emergency airworthiness directive requiring certain aircraft to replace a specific elevator aileron computer before next flight. So somewhere they're they're a little nervous about it here. Let's see if it says exactly. Yeah. Right. Emergency Airworthiness Directive from EASA, that's the European guys, European FAA, requiring certain A319, A320, and A321 aircraft to complete the replacement before next flight. While Airbus and the government have not identified the aircraft involved in the triggering event, the timing has led to widespread industry focus on the Jetblue diversion. So that one that I'm concerned about is the only one that anybody's talking about, and really what went on there. So uh, they need a little more transparency of what they know and don't know. They're ordering out a fix, and I'd like to know, were they able to reproduce the event in a simulator? Because if they weren't, they haven't found what's wrong. I've done this. I've done this before for a bunch of different aircraft incidents. You get the data from the black box, you have a hypothesis for what went wrong, and then you put it into your model and you see if you get the same results. So if you can't reproduce it, you don't know what's going on. I've always been able to take the data and figure out, have a hypothesis, and then say, yeah, this is what happened. So Airbus should have done that already. But 30 days, it's too long. That is delinquent. No better than Boeing. So, anyways, I hope we hear more about this because I'm concerned. I'm supposed to fly on A321 on Monday, and I'm a little concerned. Now, Boeing has that beautiful 737 MAX that I just flew on, over the government shutdown, had all the flights canceled. So I had to fly on Southwest, which I don't normally fly on, but they've lowered their prices and they are charging for bags. Me being a cheap engineer, I never fly with bags. I don't pay for bags. So I flew on Southwest and it was pretty nice, on that Boeing 737-800 MAX. Tons of leg room, tons of headroom. The diameter of the fuselage is like, I don't know, twice or three times bigger than the A320. So all kinds of room on the airplane. And the tickets weren't too expensive. Unfortunately, Southwest doesn't fly nonstop between my city pairs, so don't want to fly them. But unless there's some safety thing where Airbus comes clean and says, hey, we figured it out, we know exactly what it is, and we've reproduced it in our simulator, I'm a little concerned about flying on A320 family airplanes. They've got to figure out what that was. Was that terrorism, or was that a solar flare, which sounds like doesn't sound right. That part doesn't sound right. They had two incidents in the same flight and they can't reproduce it. Something ain't right there. I mean, if they have a faulty part or software that's unrelated to the solar flares, they should just come out and say it. Something's not right there. They're not telling us the whole story, and I'm concerned in this day and age. This is Ernest, and I'll talk to you later. Thank you. Hey, this is Ernest. One more thought. Maybe I'm just paranoid, but hopefully Airbus can come up with a hypothesis and reproduce that airplane event in their simulator, or they have tell the FBI they think it's something else. Hopefully it's not something goofy, some kind of business thing. I know Airbus has had a pretty successful airplane there, trouble-free, while Boeing has had a string of screw-ups. Um, 737 Max, the Dreamliner door blowing off, all kinds of crazy stuff. And they're in a hurt locker right now. Are they going to go out of business? I don't think they're going to go out of business, but their share of the global airplane market is definitely, I don't know, way down. So hopefully it's not a business thing, some kind of espionage where somebody's trying to do something to even the playing field for the global airplane market. That would be crazy, And I don't know, that flight from Cancun to Newark. Hopefully there weren't any wise guys on that airplane causing some trouble. Whatever. Airbus needs to come clean on what they know and don't know, and then so we can figure out how we want to fly.